Hello and welcome, I'm Ken Gowdy from Sax Comprehensive, and this is an introduction to jazz articulation. So let's look at a series of eighth notes. If you have a series of eighth notes, then some of these notes will fall on the on beats while some will fall on the off beats. The off beats, or upbeats as they are sometimes called, are on the and if counting. Now when playing at a slow tempo, these notes will usually be played with a swing fill. That is, two notes played as a tied triplet, the tied part being on the on beat or down beat. So this set of eighth notes when played slowly would be played like this. When these notes are played at a higher speed, these notes will be played more even, and the swing feel will come about more by the way the notes are articulated. Rule 1. Slow from the off beats to the on beats, and generally not the other way around. This will give you an idea where to tongue the notes. So here the first note is tongued, then the next note is tongued and slurred to the following note, and this pattern of tonguing and slurring is repeated until the last note, which is tongued as a single note. Rule 2. Slur all of the notes of the triplets unless another rule suggests otherwise. Here the triplet occurs on the on beat, so we slur from the previous note, which is on the off beat, to the triplet, incorporating all of the notes. The next note is tongued as a single note since it's on the on beat, and we continue the usual fashion of slurring from the off beats to the on beats. We could also include a note after the triplet in the slur since it's on the on beat, meaning we would slur 5 notes here. Going back to the string of eighth notes, if a note is higher than a preceding and following note, that is, it changes the contour of the melody from above, or changes the direction of the melody from ascending to descending, then it should be accented. In this case, since the note that changes the direction from above is on the off beat, we can slur from this note to the next note. However, in this case, the higher note is on the on beat, and we do not slur from the on beat to the off beat. So this note is tongued as a single note. The previous note is not slurred into it since we want to accent this note, meaning that the previous note is tongued as a single note also. When a note changes the contour of the melody from above, it may interrupt the sequence of tonguing and slurring, and you'll have to be careful to resume this usual way of slurring from the off beats to the on beats as soon as possible, and not end up by doing backward slurring, that is, slurring from the on beats to the off beats. This is the same for triplets. Here the slurring over the triplet is broken up to accent the change in the contour. But as was said before, there are no strict rules, and so you will find that triplets are articulated differently. A few triplets in a row can be slurred throughout, or the slurring can be broken up. With these tentative rules in place, let's look at some examples. Here is a passage from the song Move, as you would find it in a piece of sheet music, and as you can see, the articulation follows the rules just outlined. The first note is on the off beat, so it is slurred to the next note, but since the next note is part of a triplet, the slur goes over all of the notes of the triplet. The next note changes the contour, so should be accented, but since it's on the on beat, it should not be slurred to the next note, nor is it slurred from the previous note since we want to accent this note. From there, the tonguing and slurring follows the usual rules. Here's another example from the song Indiana that follows the rules except for the last note, which is included in the slur. The triplet is broken up to accent the last note of the triplet, which changes the contour of the melody from above. Here is an example from Cherokee which follows the rules, but this example from Cheers, which has a similar note formation for much of the passage, is articulated differently, especially with the slurring from the on beat to the off beat, and the triplet is broken up. Now compare that passage to another from Indiana, which has exactly the same note formation, but again articulated differently. So this reinforces the idea that there are many ways to articulate a passage, but usually the articulation would revert back to the rules stated before. You would have to listen to lots of great jazz players and try to copy their articulation until it becomes habit or instinct for you when you play. One thing to listen out for is the length of the notes. The way musicians play and the way it is written down can be different. Usually music is written in a way that is easiest to write down. So notes are written as quarter, eighth or 16th notes, but in reality these notes may not be held for their full length. For example, the last note of a phrase may be played shorter than written. Some other notes are held for their full value, while others are cut shorter with the tongue. Some notes either start before the beat or on the beat or slightly after the beat, which would be difficult to write down in sheet music as the difference in time may be as small as the duration of a grace note, but it is important for the swing feel. Not only should you listen for the length of the notes, but also which notes are accented and whether the volume rises during longer notes. Some teachers will use syllables to get this point across, so before playing a melody, you could try to vocalize it using syllables. For example, an eighth note before a rest and quarter notes are tongued and shortened for effect. So the syllable dot is used since in pronouncing the syllable dot, the tongue would return to the reed to stop the sound. Just like when you pronounce it, the tongue moves away from the roof of your mouth and returns to it. A staccato note would then be vocalized as dit. A single eighth note would be do, and when slurring to another note, you would vocalize do. An accented note would be day. This may take some time to get used to, but if you can sing the notes, it may help. This phrase is an extract from Ray Smith's book, The Real Jazz Pedagogy Book, and here he is vocalizing this phrase.
Do 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 dot 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 do do ah.
By the way, he argues in his book that you should never slur more than 2 notes in a row unless it involves triplets, since it leads to overslurring. But I guess it depends on the effect that you're trying to achieve, and the articulation in the Charlie Parker book often involves slurring more than 2 notes. Ray Smith has lots of videos to accompany his book on YouTube if you want to find out more about this. There are other ways to do this and other syllables that can be used. For example, there is a tonguing method which goes by various names such as doodle, duden, duen, etc. Basically, you would articulate the syllables such as duden for the tongue note and the note that it is slurred to. So you would pronounce dude for the note that is on the offbeat and then the syllable n for the note that it is slurred to. Depending on what syllables you choose will give you a slightly different effect. Well, I hope you found something helpful in this video, even though it was just an introduction to jazz articulation, but it did give you some ideas which you can go away and do some further research on it if you want to. There are various books on the market to do with jazz articulation and bebop articulation to be more specific. Well, let me say thank you for watching this video. Again, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next video. Stay safe. Bye-bye.